Hi everyone, my name is Vikas and I am broadcasting this T4 TV live stream from my dining room in London. As many of us have been laid low by COVID and have had to work from home. And during the pandemic, I have taken the opportunity to bring to the fore personal heroes of mine, friends of mine, and share with them just the greatness of the people that I speak about. Because, I often pinch myself thinking, well, I'm so fortunate to have been in the same orbit as certain people. And today's guest is absolutely one of those. And so I want to, as the subject at the bottom of the screen says, when you educate a girl, everything changes. And in that particular sentence and theme lies the inspiration behind a NGO called Camfed in the UK. And today I'm so delighted to bring my friend Lucy Lake to you. Lucy, welcome to the T4 live stream. Thank you for everything that you do.
Thanks, Vikas. It's a real pleasure to join with you here.
And so, Lucy, I have been obviously watching your work for a very long time, and I wanted to use this opportunity to tell the audience that watches this a little bit about your work. So would you mind just going through a little bit of your history and then we'll fast forward to where you are today. And then I have a set of questions I want to ask anyway, which I think will be beneficial for those that are interacting with this live stream. So over to you. Tell us a little bit about Camfed.
Sure, Vikas. Well, I'll start by just picking up on our origins in the early days to take you on a short whistle-stop journey to how we get to where we are today. So we began Camfed in the early 1990s. Which was a time when the benefits of girls' education were beginning to be understood. The World Bank was beginning to produce the evidence to demonstrate the impact of girls' education on health, on the economy, on the education of future generations. But the received wisdom of the time was that girls were not in school because their parents did not want to be there. So all the investment in girls' education was going into advocacy to try and persuade parents to send their daughters to school. So we set out to prove that if you took poverty out of the equation, then girls would be in school alongside boys, that the problem was one of poverty, not one of culture, as how it was being positioned. And so we started by supporting cohorts of girls through the school system and then really following them on their journey through school to identify the obstacles they faced on the way, and in working with their communities and with ministries of education to be able to take on those obstacles so that girls could progress successfully through school, could learn and could make a successful transition after school. And it was really through those key moments of progression and transition that we were able to take stock and look at how we could evolve our program to better meet the needs, not just of the girls we were supporting, but more widely and the children within those education systems. And the key kind of turning point for us was when the first girls who had been supported graduated from secondary school and then set up the Camfed Alumni Association, an opportunity for them to come together, to develop their leadership, to engage back with their communities and with their local schools to explore how those could be improved for the younger generation of girls. And that really was the turning point for Camfed and where we are at now in having a network of 157,000 young women education leaders who are working with their school communities and finding ways to improve them and to support the younger generation of girls and boys through school.
This is pretty awesome. So one of the things that I'd love to know is which are the countries you work in?
So there's 5 countries that we mainly work in, Ghana, Malawi, Tanzania, Zimbabwe, and Zambia. And while we've had invitations to work in many more, we've really chosen to double down within those countries where we have long-standing partnerships with ministries of education, where we now have the growing alumni network of young women who've completed school across the country. And that force for change, together with those partnerships, really opens the door for us to be able to think more deeply together about ways in which education systems can be improved, particularly for the most marginalized and vulnerable children. So that's why we've decided to limit our geographic focus to a core group of countries so that we can really maximize the opportunity for change together.
And so I was on your website earlier, and I've heard this before, but I want to talk a little bit about this particular phrase that is often used, because it's important digging into that, saying that girls' education may be the highest return investment available in the world today. I remember I'm on the board, and please forgive me if this is competition, but Educate Girls in India, which is a great NGO in its own right. And Safina Hussain, the founder, talks about it as it's one of the best investments, as it has been claimed by various independent bodies, in terms of how we can fight climate change and achieve the SDGs. Can you say a little bit more into this, and where does this feeling, or where does this data point come from?
Absolutely, Vikas. And just to say that, we're great partners with Educate Girls. I think it's, really appreciate the opportunity to be able to collaborate across continents in thinking about the learning and sharing of learning around these issues. And I think that girls' education, there's a lot more evidence coming through now around the impact of that on the health, wealth of future generations. But I do think that it is how girls' education is delivered, and for us to think more and focus more on the how, that is going to be critical in unlocking the benefits of girls' education. Because I think there's been a real focus to date on the passive benefits of girls' education, that it does have that knock-on effect on family size, on future education. Whereas I think what we're really, the shift that we're making now is looking at what are the active outcomes of girls' education when you get young women who've really been empowered through their education and are transitioning on to become leaders, including as climate smart activists and in other capacities, and what more can be unlocked. So I would say that to date, we are only unlocking a small proportion of the potential for change and impact that is possible through girls' education. And I think if we think about the active outcomes, when young women are coming through as leaders and transitioning from school into those opportunities as entrepreneurs, we're going to see a much bigger impact in the decades to come.
And so, we're in this holiday season, and I want to congratulate you for being awarded the grand prize in Nick Kristof's Holiday Challenge, as it's referred to. And Nick Kristof is for those that don't know, is a fantastic writer at the New York Times, has led a lot of social campaigning work. And over Christmas time, because everyone gives gifts and does presents, and he creates a list of NGOs and charities and causes to back, and he proclaimed Camfed to be it's his grand prize winner, which is a great way of actually talking about the return on investment argument in particular, I think. So tell us a little bit about what Nick and people like that have said during this time, and what you're finding. What do we find in these countries at Christmas, especially when it comes to dealing with the pandemic and in education? Give us a real ground view as to what happens in these countries for girls.
Sure, because I think the reason why Nick, who has engaged with us over a number of years, and so, as he always does, really does some very deep-rooted due diligence in the organizations that he's prepared to name in his column. But for him, the reason why he identified Camfed was because of what he has called the multiplier effect. For every young woman who's been supported through her education by Camfed, she will in turn support 3 more girls at least in her community to go to school. And so that far outstrips the philanthropy of donors from outside in terms of just looking at the resources those young women are raising to be able to support other children and to be able to support schools and education within their communities. And so I think that multiplier effect is what has been phenomenal. And we've seen that really come to the fore this year with young women in our alumni network who are on the ground and within communities and able to respond in this context of crisis as schools have been closing down, being able to identify those young people who are left most vulnerable, which is girls in particular who are now vulnerable to early marriage. And really, it has been these last few months about getting out in front of that, literally operating a track and trace system to identify girls and other children who've been left vulnerable, to ensure that they have the support, both during the period of lockdown and to be able to re-enter school. And so of the girls we've supported, and in the 5 countries that we work, we've seen return rates to date, and schools are only just beginning to reopen, of between 98 and 100%, which I think is an extraordinary tribute to the young women in those communities in terms of how they've really safeguarded the welfare of children. But it is a real challenge, and it will continue to be a real challenge in terms of ensuring that those young people have the support to catch up around learning and, a situation that we face across the world right now.
Lucy, even before the pandemic, I remember reading a BBC article about how it'll be some crazy kind of time frame, like 2078, before every girl in Africa is enrolled in a school. What are the facts? How many girls are out of school? What is the situation? Can you give us some data points?
Sure, because it's currently just over 52 million girls who are out of school, although that number in the context of the pandemic is likely to increase. And so that is something that we're really keeping an eye to. And that's where I think we will need to see real innovation in opportunities for catch-up, second chance schooling, operating alongside the formal schooling system to enable us to be able to reach out to those girls. And particularly in this context where we're going to see high levels of dropout within the school system and a real challenge for re-entry.
And so, Lucy, I now want to go to your model, right? So you obviously make sure girls receive schooling. You've also spoken about your alumni model, the Karma Network, if I'm not mistaken, it's called. Can you tell us about these 2 distinct areas of your work? And if someone was to say, what is so incredible about Camfed? What is it that you would lay an emphasis on? Is it the Karma Network, or is it the groundwork that you do with girls, getting them into school?
I would say because it is very interlinked, because I think it's the kind of virtuous cycle that you can deliver and ultimately accelerate when you have girls going through the school system who are being guided by and receiving support from young women from within their communities who are the role models and who are the link to local authorities, who can ensure that those girls are receiving the right support, who can be the bridge to the formal education system, which is often staffed by teachers who are from outside the community, who may not speak the mother tongue. So I think it's the combination of the 2. It's how do you create opportunities for young people, particularly young women, after school in a context of low employment? And how do you create opportunities that actually link back to supporting the younger generation of girls through school? And that, for me, is where there is the real opportunity for a system shift. And because if you create that virtuous cycle, it becomes ever more accelerating, if you like, with girls completing school, joining that network, signing up, and then supporting the younger generation of girls through school. And so I think it's not one or the other, it's how we bring those together. And I think that's what's been really exciting. As well, because it positions young people in those communities as the experts on the challenges that they've faced in going through school, and being able to surface those challenges with education authorities, with other authorities in their communities, so that they can be resolved effectively for the younger generation coming up through the school system.
So Lucy, thank you so much for that. And I flash on over here, obviously the Nick Kristof, the grand prize winner that you were awarded. But you also, you're on a roll, obviously, right? So you also won this year's Yidan Prize with your colleague Angeline, which is the world's largest prize in education. As a fan of prizes, it goes as no surprise for me to say well done. And actually, this is an opportunity to let more people know about your work. Tell us why this prize was given. What did they specifically cite?
They specifically cited a bit along the lines of what Nick Kristof had identified, which is how about our model for how young people, after having completed school, can re-engage in the school system, be recognized as experts, can bring the value of their experience to bear in the education setting and in the education process. And so it really was for that, I believe, and for the evidence that we were able to demonstrate in terms of the not just the effectiveness of our model in improving girls' retention and learning outcomes at scale, but the cost effectiveness of the model. That if you get, going back to what I was saying at the beginning, if you get the how right in supporting girls through school, what that can unlock, and in a very cost-effective way can accelerate those benefits, can accelerate those outcomes for other young people. So it really was a recognition of the virtuous cycle in our model, that young people can come through education and can turn become the role models, the leaders and activists for the younger generation. And Angie herself embodies that as one of the first girls to have been supported through school by Camfed, and is now stands as my co-executive, as executive director for Camfed in Africa. That's
just awesome. Now, Lucy, you've been with the organization for a heck of a long time. How many years is it? Is it something like 25 years, if I'm not mistaken?
It's coming up for 27.
Well, there you go. 27 years. I'm just 28 now, right? I'm turning 28. So I wanted to ask you, and I know there's a lot of people that I speak to regarding the leadership of organizations. And, whilst you may not have been at the helm for the 27 years, you have been an integral part of that story in terms of how you've built an incredible organization from scratch. And so I wanted to actually conclude this interview on the basis of, what are 3 leadership lessons? And I know that I'm springing this on you, but what are 3 leadership lessons you have learned that others who wish to emulate your success and your trajectory in terms of impact should always have at the front of their minds? We'd love to hear the Lucy Lake primer for leadership.
Gosh, that's quite a question. What a great question, because I mean, I would say that what has been fundamental to our success, and I think is at the core of our leadership model in Camfed, is our fundamental principle, which is accountability to the young people that we serve, accountability to our clients who are girls and young women. So every decision, every action in our organization is pushed through that lens by the leadership. What is going to be the impact on the individual girl? And that has been fundamental to us as we've grown. I think other dimensions to this are that, really recognizing where does the expertise lie and ensuring that we're bringing that to the fore in our decision making. So again, it is about recognizing and valuing the expertise of the young people we serve in terms of the challenges they face and their understanding of what represents viable solutions. So I would say that. And thirdly, the openness to partnership. I think partnerships have been absolutely critical to our success. Partnerships at every level with communities, with ministries of education. And as we know, partnerships are challenging because partnerships can be a real time and resource draw on an organization. But I think as leaders, to be able to identify who are the key partners, where are the shared value systems, I think that can lead to a much greater impact for an organization.
What's been the most fulfilling partnership that you've had at Camfed? I don't want to put you in a tight spot. I'm not asking you to prioritize one or the other, but what comes to your mind give me an example of a partnership that you've had that you think has just driven incredible results?
I think it's actually some of the most, we've had great partnerships, so I wouldn't want to necessarily value one over another, but if I were to share an example of where I think different organizations can come together and, the synergy, we're greater than the sum of our parts, if you like, is where we've been able to partner with social enterprises like Kiva, for example, to be able to, which is the online microloan provider, to be able to define sustainable incentive schemes through access to interest-free capital for young people to be able to go on and progress after school, to be able to set up businesses, which in turn is enabling them to fund their work in education. So I think there's kind of cross-sectoral partnerships and openness to look beyond one's own sector. I think that's where we've seen the real value in innovation and synergy taking shape.
And you also mean your new partnership with T4, right?
Absolutely, Vikas. As a forum for those who are thinking differently and prepared to really drive new opportunities, new pathways for change.
Well, Lucy, please know that, and you already know this because I say this every time to you, that I think the world of you and your work. And I hope that those that have been watching on this live stream and will interact with it in the future also get a glimpse, at least, of the magic of Camfed. If there was, I want to employ, I'm no Nick Christoph, but if I was to employ everyone in terms of to make a commitment this Christmas towards something that's an organization that does incredible work, I would look no further than Camfed. And so I'd like all of you to visit their website and support. Lucy, thank you so much. And I hope that we'll have a future opportunity to do the same again, hopefully with Angie this time, who I'd love to get on here. So thank you so much. And I appreciate you coming on this live stream. Good
Thanks
night.
so much, Vikas. Thank you.